So, welcome to Krav Life. Today I got a special guest, Mr. Ken Koepke. How are you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. So for our listeners that might not know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're based out of and stuff like that?
Sure. So I'm Ken Koepke. I'm based out of Tucson, Arizona. Former military, retired law enforcement, still in the law enforcement field, still practicing and still teaching Krav Maga and other different martial arts.
Oh, perfect. So let's dive a little bit into your background. What sort of, because you said a bunch of different martial arts, did you start in the martial arts and then move to Krav Maga, or did you start in Krav Maga?
No, I started in Kempo karate when I was just a wee boy.
Perfect.
I think I started when I was in fourth grade, maybe something like that. Fourth, fifth grade.
Oh, nice.
In and out of karate. From there, did a little bit of Wing Chun Kung Fu. Back to karate. Just kind of went back and forth a little bit here and there. And then, let's see. Went in the military shortly, once I became of age to go in the military, straight out of high school. I saw Krav Maga for the first time in the Marine Corps when I was in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask what branch you were in.
Yeah, I figured I better throw that in there,
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I saw Krav Maga when I was in the Marine Corps. I fell in love with it. I was like, I've got to get into some of this. And so once I was out of the Marine Corps, I started looking for it, and I found a school here in Tucson. It was originally called the Ultima, and I started training there and stuck with it ever since.
Oh, nice. And where did you see the Krav Maga? Was it stateside or was it overseas?
It was stateside, but the training was conducted by other military forces that were teaching a little bit of it. Yeah, so it was when I first saw it, it was a lot of weapons based. It was knife and firearms, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically more combative than you might see in a typical U.S. based Krav Maga class, but as you go through, you learn that it's all mixed together.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And so you, after getting out of the service, you took up Krav Maga with at Ultima, you said, and so how did everything progress from there? So you were taking your Krav Maga, and then what happened?
Well, when I started taking Krav Maga, I was also taking the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a weapons class. So I was doing those. I just kept training in those on a continuous basis. I kind of fell off of the Jiu-Jitsu and stuck with the weapons and Krav Maga, and just climbed through the ranks. Eventually, I think I was in my level 5 when I first started helping teaching classes and learning how to teach classes, and stuck around there helping with teaching classes, and eventually was invited, to go to the upper ranks, and went through the upper ranks. Eventually, achieving black belt, and then going on to achieve my second black belt. And around that time, started my own school.
Nice.
And been running my own school ever since, and switched affiliations. I started out in United States Krav Maga Association,
mm-hmm.
and went, ranked through U.S. Krav Maga Association, and switched over eventually to Alpha Krav Maga, where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I am. I'm still teaching there, and still affiliated with them.
Perfect. Yes, I like Sam. He's really a really good guy.
He's outstanding. He's a wonderful person.
Yeah. So how long have you had your studio then?
I've been running my school for probably, I think about 6 years, 7 years.
Okay. All right. That's a good amount of time. Now, what sort of what do you focus on teaching your students? Because you said that the Krav Maga that you saw in the Marine Corps, or that you saw from the other forces, was more combative based. Mm-hmm. Is that the same track that you're taking with your students, or do you take a different track with them?
So let me back up just a little bit. I wouldn't say more weapons based, but I would say I would put it more as in the fact that there was more weapons involved, being it was more military based. There was more weapons involved in that aspect. But as far as my teaching goes, I incorporated all weapons. Let's see, empty hand, offensive, defensive on both weapons side and defensive side.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say I changed any of the teaching. I actually, if anything, I added to it.
Okay.
I also study in a Kali, which is Filipino martial art. It's stick, hand, and knife. It's a weapons-based combative system as well, and they both complement each other very well. So I would say, with, for instance, knife work, I incorporate a little bit of the Kali in with the Krav Maga, and it blends great.
It seems to. I do that as well. So your client base, is it more law enforcement? Is it more just the average Joe, or military? Do you cater to all three? Do you have special programs?
I don't have any special programs for anybody. I mean, I do offer discounts to law enforcement, first responders of any kind, medical staff. But as far as the student base goes, it's I have a little bit of everything, military, law enforcement, the regular Joe, females of all different various ages. So yeah, it's good for everybody, And one thing about Krav Maga that I've always liked is it doesn't matter where you're at as far as your physical shape. It's adaptable to anybody's physique as far as being able to defend yourself goes.
Cool. So you said you switched affiliations. So what sort of prompted that? And is there sort of a difference in the teaching philosophy, or what prompted the switch from one organization to the next?
The switch came. Actually, it was due to. I would say it was due to mostly high. There was a high affiliation rate in Tucson with USKMA, and rather than create a dispute, so to speak, I just moved on and switched to affiliations. And as far as the teaching goes, they're similar. I mean, they're both the same discipline. One is, I think, I think Alpha is a lot more traditional based as far as the teaching goes. The instructor is a little more experienced, as far as some things go. And, I like them both, really.
Yeah.
I don't see too much of a deficiency in either one.
Mhm.
Just happened to
Oh,
be fate to be as it was.
nice. Did switching to Alpha, like, do you have, did that give you like greater access to training? Like, because I don't know how far Sam is from you, because he's also in Arizona, is he not?
Oh yeah, he's about an hour and a half from me.
Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah, so it's not too difficult for me to get up there and train with him versus Mark Slane. He's based all the way out. I think he's in Maine or something, somewhere around there. He's far East Coast.
Mm.
So getting together with him was a whole lot more difficult.
Yeah, yeah. So that definitely makes it nicer when you can reach the head of the organization a lot easier, and especially when you're within driving distance of it.
Yeah.
So, how is the atmosphere in? And you said you're in Tucson, right?
Mm-hmm.
How's the atmosphere there? Because I know certain parts of the country are experiencing increased levels of violence and tension and everything. How is the Tucson area coping?
Tucson's pretty dormant as far as it goes with the issues with the rest of the country which you're describing too. Yet I haven't really noticed any influx in that way.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's kind of dormant here. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain. You'd think that during these times people would be itching to get into training somewhere, but
Yeah.
I haven't noticed an increase really myself at all.
Oh, wow.
Krav Maga is not really I wouldn't say the easiest of disciplines to study.
No, definitely not.
It's one of those ones where you got to work hard.
Nothing wrong with a little work, right?
No, I never thought so anyway.
So, um, so are you guys completely opened up, or is there still restrictions on the training?
Yeah, no, we're completely open.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So through the different organizations that you've been with, right? Like training with Sam Today and Sloan. Have you had any other sort of like, interesting experiences or people that you've trained with over the years that you really enjoyed?
Oh yeah, many. Let's see. My instructor from Kali is Master Apollo Ladra, and phenomenal instructor. Very smart. Puts things together very well. And that was fun to train with him. He's great attitude, great relaxed type of guy. But serious when it comes to training.
Mm-hmm.
He'll have you going for hours and hours, and you're wondering, are we ever going to stop? And I've also studied Aikido or in Tucson here too, and that's one of my favorite personal type of disciplines myself. And so I find it relaxing. And my instructor there, again, another one who is just phenomenal instructor. So yeah, I mean, everybody I worked with, has always been, it's great teachers and just wonderful things to show and give to people.
Nice. Yeah, it's always it's always nice when you've trained with like really really good people, because then that only helps your teaching, right?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like you channel them through you, and then your students gain from those experiences as well. So let's say that you're bringing in a brand new student. What's like the first thing that you sort of, or what do you find most important for the beginner student to learn or to acquire from Krav Maga? Because I know like a lot of people are like, oh, I want to learn self-defense for this, self-defense for that, right? And that's not always what's most important or best for them. What do you find is the most important thing for them to learn off the bat?
All right, that's a great question. Also a very difficult one to answer. So for Krav Maga especially, well, let me put this in two different ways here. So for a beginner, I like to emphasize on the mindset. The mindset's probably the most important thing when I look at combative arts and stuff. That's one thing that I tend to look at myself from the deeper aspect of things is the mindset. For Krav Maga, it's not just a discipline is something you want to practice and learn. It's also a way of living your life. To be more self-aware, to have that, that greater situational awareness, identifying possible threats, that thing. So it really just the type of to bring in a new student, I kind of like to know where they're at, like why they want to train, like where did it come from that they want to learn Krav Maga? Did something happen to them? Or did you just see a video that you liked? All those things kind of I feel are really important. And then emphasizing, where Krav Maga came from and what it's used for in its totality. Emphasizing that to a new student, and they kind of look at you with a blank stare. Like, well, I just want to learn to, kick and punch. And then starting a new student off in training, foundation, I think, is one of the most important things. Level one, the basics is probably the most important level you're going to learn, because that everything feeds off of that foundation, And if I can build a solid foundation in the student, everything else under that is just accessory, And teaching students that way has proven to be one of the best methods I can come up with. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'll start off new students. It's just basically keep forming a solid foundation, meaning stance, movement, hand position. One of the biggest things about new students is trying to tell them to keep their hands up on a constant basis.
Oh, you mean it's not supposed to be down at your side all the time?
Or down here.
Yep.
This is the important box. So yeah, those are the main beginning things I like to emphasize the most.
Now you mentioned that mindset is one of the important things. What type of mindset do you try to instill in your students?
So the mindset I like to instill is resort to violence as a last resort. But when you have to resort to violence, resort to it better than the next guy. Meaning, if I have to resort to violence, it's come to a point where I have no other choice. Mm-hmm. And if I have to resort to that violence to make it more explosive and just, I don't know, as violent as I possibly can, in a controlled way, hopefully better than the threat that's there.
Right.
I don't know if that's the best explanation, but off the top of the head,
Yeah, no. So do you also advocate, like, advocate like preemptive striking as part of that?
Absolutely, if the situation dictates it, and that's another big thing, that has to be said too, is that the situation will dictate tactics. Tactics don't dictate situations. If it's called for that I need to be the one to strike first, absolutely. I mean, it's if I get knocked unconscious, well, then where am I at then? Who knows what's going to happen after that? Especially if you're protecting loved ones. If you have children to protect, or you have a spouse to protect, and they can't fend for themselves, you find yourself in a situation that could be life-threatening, and dangerous for other people. You might have to just take that preemptive strike.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people kind of misinterpret about self-defense in general, and that self-defense is you wait for the other person to hit you and then you can do something, and that is not always the case. Sometimes if you need to strike first.
You're absolutely right, but there's the stigma also of there's a stigma of also catching the charge for it. Being charged with assault. That's what I think. I think that's where that comes from. Is that whole idea of if I strike first, I'll get the charge. Versus the other person strikes first, they get the charge. So I think that's where that comes from. And nowadays in society, you live with the cameras everywhere, so that only increases that fear.
Yeah. Actually, can I get you to repeat that? You were like frozen.
Oh, let's see. Where did you go on?
I had said that sometimes you need to strike first.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. So with that, there's the stigma of catching an assault charge. That's what I was saying. Was we have the fear of if I strike first, I might get that charge of assault. Being the society we live in nowadays, everybody, there's a camera everywhere. So there is that fear and that consequence. You could put it that way. But like we already discussed, the need for it may outweigh the consequence.
And that's a good point. Do you ever touch on any of with the stipulation that you're not dispensing any sort of legal advice, but do you talk about the legal ramifications of the stuff that we learn in class?
A lot, because a lot of the techniques that I teach and will come across can be potentially lethal, especially when you're dealing with a weapon involved. Whether you're dealing with a disarm or just a straight attack. We can't always return the attack. Meaning, if I take a knife from somebody with a great disarm and it just happens to be the one that works the way you need it to work, and then I turn and use the knife on that person, yeah, that can be kind of ugly, especially when it comes to the legal side of things. So yeah, I do touch on that quite a bit. I'll tell people, hey, here's where this can go south and become a potentially deadly situation. Here's where we can kind of stop and say, hey, to that person, recognize the bad day you're having and walk away. So yeah, it does come up quite often.
Interesting. So when you're teaching the class, then is it are you dealing with scenarios then? Is that how you're teaching them? Going, okay, this is the scenario, and then this could be the ramifications of this, or here's alternatives that you can do in this situation. Is that how you're teaching them?
Absolutely, all the above. All the above. We'll do scenario base, and we'll start it as a simple scenario and end it in a certain spot, and then it kind of happens on its own. It'll graduate to something, more chaotic and more dangerous.
Can you give us like a little example of like how that's like how you do that? Like you'd set up the scenario and then just real quick.
Sure. So let me a good example. Okay, so I'll set up a situation to where it starts out combatively. Maybe you're dealing with two people, and you throw that, like we were talking about, that preemptive strike, right? And you move on from one to the next, and you wind up capitalizing on the situation, and all of a sudden, out of the bystanders or what have you that are around, comes a knife attack. Okay, and you're successful in the knife attack. Hopefully you're successful in the knife attack. You do the right particular technique. You wind up disarming that person. You grab the said weapon, in a chance to defend yourself, and wind up moving it to the next level, which would be now it's a lethal situation. When at first it might not have been such a lethal situation. You've graduated to that point because now they're attacking again, and you're holding a lethal weapon. So what do? Do we fight back with that lethal weapon, or do we, maybe just run? A lot of situations, a lot of scenarios will kind of wind up like that in that area.
Nice. So that definitely makes it more interesting for the student if you're relating it back to situations that they could possibly get themselves into, right?
Absolutely. And what it does also is it makes the student have to think. And thinking under pressure and stress like that, as you may know, it's not something that comes very easy. That fight or flight kicks in, and you're kind of all over the place. The brain goes haywire.
Yeah, and then it's through the drilling that we can help overcome that. All right.
Stress-induced training is what I found is the most impressive about it. That's that stress that we add, toward the end of the class when we put everything together, and we put under a stress drill, for what we call it, makes a world of difference. It shows you how quickly your technique can fall apart, and it shows you, how effective it can actually be.
And how tiring it actually is.
Oh, sure. Not to mention that part.
Right. I don't think people realize that, even these simple drills, after 30 seconds a minute, and you're breathing heavy, and these are people that are in shape too, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you add the stress, and then that adrenaline gets going, and it's completely different than you find in a lot of martial arts. So how do you find your past training, your non-Krav training and your military training, it influences your approach to Krav Maga? Because like every instructor is different, right? So how does your past experience kind of give you your unique flavor of Krav Maga?
All right. So my past experience gives me my, as you put it, my flavor, solely from experience. That's the best way I can describe it, is through a lot of experience, just growing up as a kid, just getting into normal, everyday kind of kid fights, all the way to military and then to law enforcement, is recognizing how and kind of trying to pass that recognition off to students, is that how serious it can be, and how quickly it can become deadly, and how chaotic and fast it happens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can come out of nowhere at any given time and just completely befuddle you. It's no way to describe it unless you've actually been there. But that's where I try to instill in my training is the most realistic way I can teach somebody is by making it as real as possible. Without of course, anybody getting hurt and causing anybody to have an injury. That's the hardest part about it, is trying to blend those two worlds as far as, how far can we take it before the safety is an issue,
Yeah, and because you want it to be as realistic as possible, but the more realistic it gets, the greater the chance of injury.
Yeah.
So you got to balance that out, and especially with like newer students too, right? Like obviously, like your black belts and advanced belts, they're probably all in for, let's see how dangerous we can make this. But the newer student, that can tend to put them off or scare them, because not everybody has that attitude yet, right?
Especially, yes, that is where I see. I wouldn't call it a downfall, but it's definitely like you said, it's definitely a deterrent for a new student to witness, an upper level stress drill, for instance. That's why I think it's a good idea to have, a beginner's and an advanced class schedule. That way I don't take a beginner and put them into a, an upper level class where they just, what? I'm sorry, I'm out. That's a good way to lose a student, so I think it's good idea to separate those two. But then again, you want them to be able to see, where their training can take them. And by having them witness what the upper levels are doing and how they work and in that stressful environment, that can also spark that, wow, I really want to move forward in this, so yeah, it's kind of like a give and take when it comes to that.
Yeah, and that's the tricky part, right? Because you go over to, because like in Israel, right, everybody has to take it when they're in the military, right?
Yeah.
You can't go, oh well, no, this is too rough for me, I'm out of here, right? Yeah. But here, people are volunteering to take it, essentially, so they're signing up for it, and if we push them out too soon, then I think we're kind of failing as instructors, because our whole job is to make sure that these people stick around long enough so that they can defend themselves. That is our ultimate goal, right? It's not just the newest, coolest self-defenses. It's my student needs to be able to protect themselves.
Right.
And if we scare them off, then they've lost that, right? Yeah. So but then it's like you have to transition them over to to the more aggressive stuff, and it's not going to be easy to do, all right? But I think everybody needs to benefit from classes in Krav Maga. Do you teach any sort of workshops or self-defense, like short-term programs, seminars, stuff like that?
Yeah, I do a lot of different things like that. So with, I'll do every once in a while, I'll do a seminar, like a knife seminar, or for so I also teach firearms as well, both basic to tactical. And what I'll do once in a while is I'll put on, a basic firearms course for all levels of students, to kind of give them, a taste and a feel for what a controlled environment for training that would look like, because I'll blend them all together. I blend the Krav with the firearms, and that can be intimidating too, so I'll put on a seminar for weapons, whether it be stick, knife, or whatever, and then I'll also put on seminars for firearms and advanced courses for my existing firearms students. So yeah, there's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
And like, where do you teach your firearms? Do you have like a range that you go to, or?
Yeah, there's a range that I'll use here in Tucson. It's behind the everyday range, and they call it the executive course. And basically, they let you go back there. Well, they let me go back there and pretty much teach what I need to teach. So it comes in a lot of handy.
Yeah, no, it's nice to have a resource like that. All right, so if someone wanted to, pop in and train with you, or have you out to their facility to teach, how would they? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Just my phone number. That would be the best way to get a hold of me. The Facebook is I'm running into a lot of problems with the Facebook page. And I'm redesigning the website, so it's really not available at the moment. So my phone number would be the best way to get a hold of me.
All right. Well, we'll post that information for you, and I want to, thank you for coming on and sharing your experience with us, and hopefully we get to meet at some point at some seminar or event or training somewhere, and get to talk to you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
All right.